Welcome back. U.S. immigration authorities plan to begin carrying out mass arrests of illegal immigrants this Sunday. The Trump administration says the raids will target violent criminals and people who already have orders of deportation against them. The raids will mostly take place in about 10 cities across the country, including New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Houston. But even though raids like this were commonplace under the Obama and Bush administrations, Democrats across the country are digging in and trying to block their intended effects. That includes Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's accusing the Trump administration of fooling the country into believing that such action is needed.
This is a manufactured crisis because the cruelty is manufactured. This is a manufactured crisis because there is no need for us to do this. There's no need for us to overcrowd and to detain and under-resource. There is no need for us to arrest innocent people and treat them no differently than criminals when they are pursuing their basic human rights.
But there's more. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, among many other elected Democrats in congressional and statewide offices, are offering advice to illegal immigrants on how to avoid the raids. And in the beginning of a Twitter thread posted last night with that advice, Congresswoman Omar uses a new term to describe illegal immigrants, writing, "Every person, including undocumented Americans, has rights if they are approached by ICE." But most Democrats also say that the situation at the southern border is indeed a crisis, even though they scoffed at President Trump just a few weeks ago when he used the word crisis to describe it. Earlier today, Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz provided evidence of just how much leading congressional Democrats belittled and even laughed at the situation on the border not too long ago. Watch.
I would invite my Democratic colleagues to go to my official Twitter account where I have posted an interview from January 9th, 2019. It was on CNN, not exactly a hostile network for you folks. And it's, well, let me just play what the question was. And it's Jim Clyburn, the Democratic whip, answering the question.
The president said there's a humanitarian crisis at the border, is there?
Absolutely not.
The president said there's a humanitarian crisis at the border, is there?
Absolutely not.
The president said there's a humanitarian crisis at the border, is there?
Absolutely not.
Well, he did get some condemnation from a Democrat on the panel for looping that audio, but it was told that he was indeed entitled to do that. All right, let's go to our right-left panel to debate. Joining us now is America's Voice News contributor Tom Borelli and Max Burns, Democratic strategist and senior contributor to Millennial Politics. Good to have you both with us. Yeah. Max, I want to replay that soundbite from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I want you to take a listen to it again. Go ahead.
This is a manufactured crisis because the cruelty is manufactured. This is a manufactured crisis because there is no need for us to do this. There's no need for us to overcrowd and to detain and under-resource. There is no need for us to arrest innocent people and treat them no differently than criminals when they are pursuing their basic human rights.
Max, can you explain that to me? There is no need to do what? So what is she suggesting be done? That there'll be open borders? I mean, is it a right for people to come to America?
So it is a right to seek asylum. And what Ocasio-Cortez is saying, and what Democrats have said from the beginning, is that the people are not the humanitarian crisis. The process, or lack thereof, is the humanitarian crisis. Essentially closing down ports of entry so you have to go around and come in illegally. Removing the process of allowing immigrants to leave detention pending their trial, which has a 99% return rate.
I believe that it is the opposite. I have a 90% rate of not returning for their trial.
No, that's completely...
That's according to the ICE directive.
That's CBP's own data.
Right. Well,
Department of Justice track system.
The CBP data does then say that 90% of them do not come back for trials. But Tom, what do you say to that? That the system needs to be changed, as Max says, and it is these people's basic human rights to come into America?
Well, look, a sovereign country needs a tight border, a secure border, and we certainly don't have one. And this is why we have a crisis at the border, which President Trump said last year, and all the Democrats have denied that. They said it was a manufactured crisis. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, a little spin on manufactured crisis, but this crisis is really caused by the Democrats because not only have they not secured the border, they're creating incentives. Governor Gavin Newsom is giving health care to illegal aliens of between 19 or 25 or something like that. What kind of an incentive is that? That's an incentive to come over the border, and what, 100,000 people are coming over the border between the ports of entry? It's open invasion, and we need to secure the border. And Ocasio-Cortez is not helping it.
So, Max, she also doesn't want to give more funds to help these detention centers. She's voted against that. So what exactly are Democrats like her suggesting be done then? That people can just walk in, no problem, be let out, and not send more funds to improve these facilities?
Not at all. It's a simple process. We don't want to fund more detention facilities beyond what ICE is already legally authorized to hold. We want to make a process that gets back to where we were, that enforces the Refugee Act, that allows for immigrants to take out bond and leave pending their hearing. We want metering, the process of closing border facilities and forcing people to go around to end. I mean, it's never been done before, and it doesn't work now.
And you could say that they could just go to the border and ask for asylum at those designated asylum centers,
which are closed.
All right, let's now focus on another issue, because this is not all that Ocasio-Cortez has been making news about. As you know, she's also been locked in a feud with fellow Democrat and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She even said this week that she believes Pelosi has been singling her out for criticism, along with some other new Democrats, because they are women of color. Well, even President Trump is taking notice of this internal spat, and here's what he had to say about it.
Well, I think Cortez, who kept Amazon out of New York, and they don't like her for that, thousands and thousands of jobs, I think Cortez is being very disrespectful to somebody that's been there a long time. I deal with Nancy Pelosi a lot, and we go back and forth, and it's fine. But I think that a group of people is being very disrespectful to her. And you know what? I don't think that Nancy can let that go on. A group of people that came from, I don't know where they came from. I'm looking at this Omar from Minnesota. And if 1/2 of the things they're saying about her are true, she shouldn't even be in office. But Cortez should treat Nancy Pelosi with respect. She should not be doing what she's doing. And I'll tell you something about Nancy Pelosi that you know better than I do. She is not a racist, okay? She is not a racist. For them to call her a racist is a disgrace.
And Republicans, even ones who don't support President Trump, are also taking notice of the effects of this AOC-Pelosi feud. In an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, Republican critic of President Trump, Peggy Noonan, notes that Ocasio-Cortez's actions are hurting the Democrats, and she even calls AOC a one-woman re-election committee for President Trump. All right, firstly, Tom Borelli, who would have seen the day that President Trump comes out in defense of Nancy Pelosi?
President Trump is a smart man. He's driving that wedge and smiling about it. Look, Representative Ocasio-Cortez and the squad, they're radical members of the Democrat Party. They're labeling the whole party as radical, whether they call detention centers concentration camps, calling for the end of ICE, calling for the end of Homeland Security. That kind of information is branding the Democrats as extremists, and that's going to have a really impact in those moderate swing districts that the Democrats won in 2018. I think the whole thing is now going to flip around. Remember, in 2018, those Democrats who were running, they ran against Nancy Pelosi because she was too extreme. Who would think that Nancy Pelosi is now the moderate in the Democrat Party?
Max, is this infighting going to be very damaging to the Democratic Party?
I think putting this on Ocasio-Cortez is nuts. I mean, they were acting like it's the first time Republicans have ever threatened to call Democrats extremists or socialists.
No. We're talking about the fighting between AOC and Pelosi. It's Pelosi and AOC that are, shall we say, scratching and clawing at each other, not to use a sexist term.
But you said that, not me.
But that's what's happening here. I mean, they're the ones that there's infighting between them. So forget the Republican response to this. How detrimental is it to the party? Because you can't deny that there is a rift between Pelosi and, at the very least, these other 4 members of the squad?
Yeah, I think passions are high right now. And we have a lot of different views within the Democratic Party. It's not a one view, one issue party. So whenever you
see it as a positive for the party?
I do. I think this makes us stronger. It helps the Democratic Party find out where it actually sits on these issues. And it brings them forward to people in a way that is catching their attention for sure.
Tom, do you see this as a positive, that it shows the diversity of the Democratic Party?
It's a gift to President Trump and the Republicans, clearly. The infighting is intense. Pelosi called them into the principal's office, and right away, Ocasio-Cortez walks out and essentially calls her a racist. Now, I mean, this is not helping, and even before that, Ocasio-Cortez's chief of staff sent out a tweet that was critical of the moderate Democrats. So that, again, this is about the election. This is about 2020. This is about those swing districts that the Democrats are going to lose because they're being labeled as extremists, and their policies are matching that narrative.
All right, I want to bring up one more issue, and that is the House Democrats today passing a measure to require President Trump to get congressional approval before authorizing military force against Tehran. The vote passed by a 251 to 170 margin. One of the sponsors was a Republican, but only 27 of those 251 votes came from House Republicans. It's not likely that this provision will survive the final defense budget, as it needs to then be combined with the Senate's version. All right, Max, what do you make of this? I mean, does this help or hurt the United States as a country when dealing with the top state sponsor of terrorism? That there's an attempt to, I mean, it's not going to succeed, but there's an attempt to tie the president's hands in how he can respond.
You're right, it probably won't succeed, but budgets are statements of values, and I think putting Congress back in control of war power is important. I think if we're serious about Iran, and I believe that President Obama, President Trump, Americans who care about national security do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. The way to do that is not to back out of our agreement that the United Nations, the IAEA, were all saying was working.
Well, actually, Max, we're learning just how much that agreement is not working. There have been developments today, well, actually earlier this week, that the United Nations inspectors, the International Atomic Energy Agency, on the advice of Prime Minister Netanyahu, based on intelligence by the Mossad, went to an atomic warehouse that Netanyahu identified, and they did, in fact, find traces of radioactive material, which will confirm that Iran was, at the very least, violating the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So, I mean, when you look at this evidence, and when you also look at the fact that with Iran pulling out of the deal now, by conservative estimates, it'll have a nuclear weapon within a year. Does that make you reconsider the fact that this deal was a good idea?
Well, you say will confirm, because it has not been confirmed yet. No report has been released.
Well, there have been reports that a release no, there have been reports that the United Nations Atomic Energy Agency is going to issue a report. Okay, but say a report comes out next week and the United Nations has to admit that, yes, it did find radioactive materials in that warehouse that Prime Minister Netanyahu was pointing out to. Say those reports are confirmed. Do you then want to say that, hey, turns out this deal wasn't such a good idea after all?
It certainly would not help their case. I think if you look at the aggression they've shown recently, there's going to be more pressure, especially on the left, for a response to that. And that's going to be something we'll have to take as it comes.
Tom, you got 30 seconds. Final thoughts.
Well, clearly, former President Obama's strategy with Iran was a complete disaster. First of all, he shipped, what, $1.7 billion of cash to a state sponsor of terrorism. My God, what good's going to come from that? And then we find out they're cheating, just like that movie Casablanca. I'm shocked. They're developing radioactive material. That doesn't shock me, doesn't shock anybody. Lord knows why former President Obama wanted them to have a nuclear weapon.
All right, good discussion. Tom Borelli, Max Burns, thank you so much as always. Keep it right here at Clearcut Plus. We'll be right back.